Okay, so we're going to talk about more unit rates today. The first kind of unit rates would be something like this. If 4 pair of socks cost $23.80. So we're just going to write that down. I'm not going to write out whole paragraphs because we don't have time for that. But I'm going to talk about how we set up unit rates. So we've got 4 pair of socks that cost, I'm sorry, when I was in school they made us write everything in cursive. So I have a little bit of cursive and a little bit of print. I'll try to make it clear. So 4 pair of socks cost $23.80 and we're trying to find the unit rate. What we're really trying to do is figure out the price of 1 pair. We're trying to figure out, okay, well, 4 pairs of socks was $23.80. How much was 1 pair? When you are doing this kind of problem with the price, they're always wanting you to set up the rate with the price on top. It's always dollars per whatever you're buying. So you're going to have the dollars on top and the 4 pair of socks on the bottom. I'm just going to abbreviate that PR. So what I really want to do is get it to where I know what the cost is for 1 pair. How do I get there? Raise your hand if you can tell me, how do we get unit rates? What's the rule that we learned yesterday? Adley.
So I like that. One thing I see is just divide it by the bottom number.
Okay, so that is the rule, is you take the bottom number and you divide the bottom number and the top number by whatever's down here, because we want this to be 1. That's what makes it a unit. It's 1. So I'm going to divide by 4. And we are using our calculators. So let me get mine out and put it under the screen so you might be able to see what's going on there. And so I'm going to take 4 divided by 4 is 1. I can do that without the calculator. But 2380 divided by 4, I'm going to use the calculator to help me do. And I come up with 595. Now, there are some things that I've noticed in our work that are missing. You have to have a label for the dollars and for the bottom, which is pairs of socks, which we're just calling a pair. I did shorten that down. But you should have a label here and here. And then if I'm writing it as just, $5.95 per pair, it's not a unit rate if I haven't labeled it. I have to have that dollar sign. I have to know it's per pair because we're looking at the cost per pair of socks. You have to have the labels or it's wrong. Do you guys get that? You have to have the labels because a unit rate, if we look back to our previous set of notes, actually says it is a ratio that compares 2 different kinds of units. Here we're comparing dollars and pairs of socks. Okay, so that's one kind of unit rate. And that was the one with decimals. You're going to see the most is dollars. But there are a couple of different kinds, and I want to just review really quick some other things. Let's say that...
Okay, we had one yesterday in basketball.
Awesome.
Adley and I were talking. Actually, Adley brought it up.
So tell me what it is. We'll use it.
It was our points. Which game did we do worse in?
Okay.
So 55. It was 55. We think of 13. And then yesterday's was what? 4 to 37. Yeah. So Adley was like, well, which game did we do? And I said, well, we're doing that math right now. We could compare them.
Yeah.
The two.
And just divide it up.
Just divide it up.
Yeah, although it's points to points, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, you can totally divide them the same way.
I know, not exactly.
I know. It's kind of the same thing, though. All right, so I was going to do a problem. When I was in school, we all had to do typing. It was a requirement in high school. It was really computer class. We learned how to do a few computer things back in the day. It was all no Windows. It was all DOS. It was old school. No mouse. No mouse pad. It was an operating system. And so we had to type. And to pass the class, I think we had to type 60 words per minute. something like that. My friend and I were super competitive. At one point, I don't know if I can still do it. At one point, I could do 120 with only not very. You also had to not very many mistakes. It was like a whole thing. But my friend and I were competitive. We didn't have anything better to do, so we practiced and got really, really fast. I don't know. I can still type pretty fast, which is a good skill for what I do. But anyway, let's say that I typed 313 words in 5 minutes. And sometimes they did those timed things. You had to sit down and they'd give you something to copy, or these little books and these little stands, and you had to copy it and you had to do the formatting. And they would time you. Okay, so usually sometimes for a minute, sometimes for 5 minutes, and then you would see how many words per minute that was. So in this case, because I want to know how many words it is in 1 minute, if I'm doing my unit rate, I'm comparing words and minutes, and so we're going to have 313 words in 5 minutes, and you just set it up as a fraction. You can use some abbreviations for things that you abbreviate. And then our rule is always we're trying to get it down so that the bottom number is 1. That's why they call it a unit rate, because this is going to be 1 unit when we're done. So how do I go from 5 minutes to 1 minute? Raise your hand if you want to help me do that. Adley, you just did one. Priya? Divide both numbers by 5. You always divide by the denominator because that's the one we want to be 1. So if I take my calculator and I have 313 divided by 5, it comes out 62.6 words per minute. So that means I was getting part of a word done. And that's okay that we go ahead and round that off. Actually, we don't have to. It's already 0.6. But it's okay to keep that decimal. It was almost 63 words per minute. But that would be our unit rate. You can also write it 62.6 words and then a slash and minute. And that implies that it's per 1 minute. This is the way we see rates when we look in real life. Words per minute, dollars per hour, all of that stuff. Another one that is on the assignment that you guys were working on yesterday that I thought would be kind of interesting to talk about is fuel economy in vehicles. And so if I drove 280 miles in 8 hours, and I want to know what my fuel economy is, we usually want to write that, or actually not hours, I'm sorry. I messed that up. 280 miles with 8 gallons of gasoline. I'll just say gas. So I messed that up. I had it in my head and then I said it wrong. So 280 miles on 8 gallons of gas. My little car has a small tank, but I can go quite a ways in it. And so when we're doing this, they usually want you to have miles per gallon. So if I'm doing my unit rate, I'm going to set that up 280 miles and 8 gallons. And I'm using those abbreviations that we learn at some point. Just remember, miles is MI and meters is M, and there's a big difference between a meter and a mile. And so then this one actually doesn't come out a decimal if you divide it. But we would divide by 8 on both. And so on the bottom, I will have it, I'm going to figure out how far I can go on 1 gallon. And so 280 divided by 8 is 35 miles. And so here's all of my labels. And then if I want, I can write it 35 miles per gallon. And actually, if you go to a car lot and you look at the little stickers on the windows of the cars, it will just say 35 mpg. It bothers me that they just use M instead of MI because it looks like meters per gallon, but it's miles per gallon. We're Americans, we do strange things. But that's really how you're going to see it in real world. Now, before I move on to giving you guys a few minutes to work on your worksheet, why would it be good to know how far you can go on 1 gallon? What could I do with that, Josie? Okay, I can make sure I'm not going to run out of gas if I'm driving from here to, say, Denver or whatever. I can go, okay, well, so here's a little extra thing that goes along with it. I think my car's tank holds 13 gallons of gas. And so if I know that I can go 35 miles on 1 gallon, then I could take 13 times 35 and figure out how far I can go. So this is not a unit rate, but this is a way that we can use a unit rate. And so if I go on then and take, it's hard to see this on this, there we go. I have to tilt it. 13 times 35. I can find out I can go 455 miles on those 13 gallons. And then I know, okay, I probably should fill up before I get to that. You usually don't want to run your tank dry if there's bad things in the bottom of your gas tank. But that's why unit rates are important. If you figure out the cost of 1 pair of socks, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go buy 10 pairs of socks. I can know how much that's going to cost me based on how much I paid for the 4 on the first example. So that's why unit rates are important.
You can also check, well, the one person getting free one